I'm Matt Bichard with REIT.com here in San Francisco for the 2014 Leader in the Light Working Forum. Joining me is Ari Frankel from the real estate investment business of Deutsche Asset and Wealth Management. Ari oversees sustainability and ESG strategy for direct real estate investing. Ari, thanks so much for taking some time today.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we're hearing an increased focus from REITs that are actively engaged in sustainability initiatives, that gathering useful data is a key project for them going forward. Why do you think that's the case?
First of all, 100% of the studies that have been done correlating environmental performance or sustainability performance and financial performance show a positive correlation. That's not the case in other asset classes. Secondly, investors are onto that, and they understand also that they need sort of actionable frameworks and metrics that sort of enable them to assess what should be done. And especially is the case in the U.S. as we sit here at the forum and talk about some of the differences in parts of the globe. In the U.S. we've heard that investors are really looking to their managers to deliver those frameworks and strategies to them. And lastly, is the impact that buildings have on people, on communities, and on the planet. About 40% of the carbon pollution globally can be attributed to consumption of materials and resources in buildings. So I think those are the three things that really are driving it.
And what data or information do you feel is the most important or relevant to investors in this area?
Sure. So there's really three drivers. There's first, there's to preserve value. Second is to create value, and third, around impact. Around value preservation. Coming out of the financial crisis, we've seen significant losses, and so the goal being not to lose money. There's a lot of regulations that apply to buildings now, and increasingly that's the case. There's a competitive aspect as the technologies and the sort of function and design of buildings change. You want to make sure that you're able to keep your buildings leased. And then there's the environmental side. On the heels of Sandy, we certainly see a lot of focus, especially in the Northeast, a huge economic zone for the U.S., which experienced massive losses. And so there's people rethinking about how to assess some of the environmental risks that are out there. On the value creation side, there's about $1.2 trillion dollars worth of value waiting to be unlocked in energy efficiency, according to the often cited McKinsey study, and that coming with about a $512 billion investment. So the financials there are very good. Again, it's about how to get there. And then third, on impact. You can not easily, but it's straightforward, to the concept of measuring carbon pollution. But some of the, broader aspects around impact, around health, is really something that I think is a trend that is emerging and we'll be looking at more.
And how do you think the industry as a whole is doing in terms of providing these sustainability performance metrics? Not just providing them, but providing them in a context that the various stakeholders can really use.
One of the things that I often talk about with sort of internal colleagues and at forums like this is the fact that a lot of the metrics that are out there were not developed by the investment community. So without naming them, they're mostly designed by architects, engineers, construction people, governments, which is fine, and they are kind of thrown around in the vernacular of sustainability metrics. But I think if you saw metrics designed by the investment community, they look very different. Certainly with GRESB, that's one that has been kind of oriented toward investors, and I think that's one of the reasons why the uptake has been so strong. But we ultimately need to get to a place where we have objective sort of performance metrics, because that's what investors expect. Oftentimes, even if a metric does ultimately measure environmental performance around energy, water, waste consumption, some of the other stuff around health that's emerging in a few other key performance areas, what that performance actually is gets kind of lost in the wash. And so when you're trying to engage an audience, especially when you're trying to get it incorporated into valuation, which is the ultimate goal, right? You kind of bring up a larger theme that's happening in this space now as these metrics have been thrown around for a number of years, and that's from materiality and the concept of taking information that's non-financial and making it financially material. And so all the metrics, I think, are being kind of thrown around, and I think people like us are in a position to provide some guidance, to our investors and clients, and also to the industry and to the sort of purveyors of all those metrics that are out there, as to how to perhaps modify them so that they are, taken into account, more in the mainstream as opposed to sort of sitting on the side.
So picking up on that, what can programs like GRESB or NAREIT's Leader in the Light or others do to bridge that gap between investors and companies?
Yeah, the major theme that I see, going forward is sort of what I was just talking about in regard to the valuation frameworks. There are at least 5 or 6 off the top of my head that have recently been published. There's the Appraisal Institute and the Appraisal Foundation. The Institute for Market Transformation overseas. There's the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and another sort of scheme called IPD EcoPass. All of them are looking at, what are those, say dozen or so key levers of value, and they fortunately are all saying mostly the same thing. But it's about taking that information and working with, sort of internal stakeholders and those that actually are responsible for valuation, and, promoting sort of education and understanding about what those mean. And when we get there, and I'm confident that we will, we'll see, so to coin a phrase from a colleague, the value beyond the cost savings. If you sign a couple leases because of the sort of sustainability credentials of your building, you've dwarfed the the value that you might have created out of the cost savings. And so really, a broader approach that doesn't just look at the sort of a green label, but really gets under the hood and can apply for all buildings.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
For more on this and other real estate news and analysis, be sure to visit REIT.com.